Welcome to Raising OKC Kids, Conversations with Metro Family in Oklahoma City. I'm Erin Page, and today, in honor of Metro Family's 25th anniversary and 3 years of our Raising OKC Kids podcast, we are welcoming back one of our most popular guests, Dr. Tamika Rogers, for an update on one of our most downloaded podcast topics, talking to kids about racism. Welcome, Tamika. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Miss Page. I'm so glad that you're having me back. This is exciting to me.
I always love to have you. And before we get started, I will tell our listeners a bit more about you. Although Dr. Tamika Rogers is a familiar face and voice for many of you already. I first met Tamika in 2020 when she submitted a blog to Metro Family in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, titled, "I am a Black mother of 3 boys and I feel powerless." Her words and her desire to help other families process their feelings and to learn captured my attention then. And I've been grateful to get to work with her on multiple projects since. Tamika is a Tulsa native, a filmmaker, author, publisher, and columnist. She serves as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Tulsa Technology Center. She also volunteers her time across numerous organizations and advocacy groups to further DEI in Oklahoma. She's published multiple children's books and recently completed her first documentary, Crown, in an effort to stop race-based hair discrimination in schools and workplaces and advocate for the passage of the Crown Act in Oklahoma. So that's a lot that you've accomplished in the 3 years since we first met, right?
Yes, I was just thinking about excuse me, I cannot believe that it was 3 years ago. It seems like it was just yesterday. But the feeling that I have when I wrote that article, I still have it. And I just don't know, because I was just like, when you said that article, I hadn't thought about it, but then when I thought about it again, everything just came rushing back, and it was just like a kind of like almost a tense moment there. So I appreciate you so much in Metro Family for, when I was during that time, and I just started writing because that's how I process my feelings and everything. And my son said, "Hey, you should share this with everybody." And I was like, "Okay, Keith Ross, you have a good point." And I said, "I'll do it, but I doubt it if anybody will publish it." That's what I said. I'll do it, but I doubt it if anybody will publish it. And you published it. You took a chance on me. So thank you. With that kind action, and with you taking my words and not changing it, not editing it, not softening it, you changed something in me. And so for you to say you've accomplished a lot in 3 years, it's because you gave me more of the confidence that I didn't have. So thank you for that.
Well, let's just go ahead and get emotional right off the bat, friend. And I would say, I would go back and say you took a chance on me too. And I'm so thankful that you did. You have done incredible work for Metro Family since. You've done incredible work across the board. And it has been an honor for me to be the president of your fan club, your number one cheerleader. Okay, let's think back, Tamika, and let's start with some of the positives. When you think back to that first blog, and then soon after we did the parent panel podcast on talking with kids about racism, you just said that you still feel a lot of those same feelings you did when you submitted that first article. But what do you think has changed in our society, in our state, for the better? What are the good things that have happened in regards to racial equity in the last 3 years?
I would say the good things that's going on now is that as parents and family, friends, all of us seem to be more aware of situations. And we're stepping in and we're doing a lot more teaching than we did before. I think previously what we did was is we really left a lot of things up to the schools and the teachers to teach about different things. And like I said before, is I typically had shielded my sons from things like that and wasn't very open with them, you know, because it wasn't in their face. Um, and sometimes, you know, we could just act like it's not there until something bad happens. And I think from the last 3 years is we've been more proactive. We've been doing a lot of teaching without fear, without fearing, because my initial thought was is that this is going to taint him or this is going to make him think badly, you know, whether it's about police or whatever, you know, and I didn't want him to think badly, even if this is the truth and it's going on right now. But we found ways to teach without destroying their innocence. You know, we found a positive spin on teaching, even though I'm not glossing it over and saying any of it is and everything is okay. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that there's a way to teach and to be aware of your situation and surroundings without taking away a child's innocence. And I think I've been able to do that effectively. And I also think that I've given parents and teachers the tools to be able to do that as well. And so I think that's the good thing that's come out of this in the last 3 years. I mean, we've got right now where, you know, there's not too much stuff can happen in schools and even in my work as the diversity, equity, and inclusion director at Tulsa Tech. So now with this political climate, a lot of lines have been drawn for us. And I think we found a healthy way to navigate through that. Just as, you know, being a parent and still being able to teach and still giving them hope and a positive outlook of, you know, yes, this has happened and you need to know this because this really is our history, but you can grow from it and you can learn from it. And that's, you know, and sometimes I do a lot of teaching without teaching, you know, because I think that what we do as parents, as teachers, we're all teachers, is give them the tools that they can use without preaching to them. And that's by showing them in our everyday life, you know. So for my friends that I have, it's a diverse group of people, you know, and we show love to each other. And by doing that, you see your kids learning through that. And so that's the way to teach without preach.
So on the flip side of the positives, you mentioned the current political climate. What are you what are you most concerned about right now regarding racial inequities in our state and where we go from here?
Excuse me. I'm concerned with, and I'm not going to get real political, but everybody sees it, you know, as far as how our political leaders act. And I am talking about statewide. And I think that people need to know that that's one of the most important elections that you can vote in on. Everybody is so hyped up about the president. In reality, it's not the president that makes a difference in your everyday life. It's your state leaders, which all trickles down, you know. Who does your kids see the most every day? That's your teachers. right? They spend more time, if we're being honest, they spend more time with teachers than they do with us, because by the time they get home, you have a activity after school. If they do extracurricular, you're cooking, you're bathing, and then you're in bed, and then you're doing it all over again. So they spend the majority time of their time with teachers. And when teachers are called, or teachers unions and all that are called terrorists and things like that, it's kind of a big division. So that's my biggest concern is that the political climate will get in the way of learning. The political climate will stop learning. For instance, when they say about history, we can't make anybody feel bad about themselves. Well, I mean, it goes both ways with that, and when we talk about history not feeling bad, history is not supposed to make you feel good. It's history. We can't change it to make you feel a certain kind of way. It's history. And the part about history is learning that history so you can grow from that history so you don't repeat the history. So my biggest concern is when you bring politics into education and you make everything so political, then we're going to stop our teachers from teaching, and we're going to prevent our students from learning. And I think that was the biggest thing is when I just heard about the race massacre, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and that was part of it. Is that's the history that we need to know about, we need to learn, and we need to grow about it. And for it to be so political, and now we're talking about feelings and nobody getting hurt, and you have a whole huge marginalized people that are hurt, and they're still hurting. And you need to know your information, and we need to heal. And that's just a part of it, learning all of our information, learning our history, learning where we need to go to prevent this, as far as education and things like that, so we could heal together as a community. We can't heal if we keep ripping this Band-Aid off over and over and over and over again. I think Taylor Swift said something like a Band-Aid can't fix bullet holes or something like that. And it's the same thing as we're trying to appease it, but we're not trying to heal from it and fix it. And I think that is the thing is we need to get away from politics and the red side or the blue side or whatever side, the middle side, but we need to combine the sides because we would all be better together. I feel like I work with a lot of people who have different political views as I do. And I have even been labeled, and sometimes I didn't even know when I was first labeled this about 7 or 8 years, they said, "Oh, you're just a liberal." And I didn't even know what that meant. I had to go look it up. But what I learned is that we all in the morning, we all get together and we all talk, and we especially on Mondays, we come in and we talk about our weekend and this and us. And what I realize is that no matter which side of the aisle that you're from, with the people that I work with and I talk with, we all have so many things in common. And a lot of times we're saying the same exact thing. We're just letting politics and things get in the way. And it's unfortunate for our children because we're preventing them from learning a part that they should know. I mean, I was when I met some people from, California, and they said, "Oh, we already knew about this." So different states can learn about our history, but not us. So for me, that's a problem. And I do like that we are aware of it. If we pay attention and we're watching the news, and you got to be careful which news you do watch, but you are well-rounded and you're aware of what's going on, that as parents, we step in and we continue to fill in the gap and teach, because that's our job in the first place as parents.
Absolutely. I want to revisit one of the topics you have provided a lot of insight on before, because I think it's especially timely as our kids are preparing to go back to school, and especially as you're saying how important our job as parents is to teach our kids. What anti-racist values and actions can families be incorporating into our homes, especially as kids are going back to school, to teach kids early how to recognize and how to stand against racism?
That is a good question. I would say before, like I said, we model the behavior that we want our children to see. Now, sometimes we can not be such a good person when we model the behavior, because sometimes things, it happens. And so what I say with that, when I say as far as sometimes things happen, here's an example. You can be at the 4th of July, 4th of July is coming up, and you have all your family over there. You have different, you might have a diverse group, but then you still might have a different mindset as well. And so if your grandma is over from a different generation over there, and she might say a racist or sexist comment, typically people will say, will not say anything because that's grandma. And kids can hear that, but they won't say anything. Well, that's just as damaging, right? So I believe this wholeheartedly is that you correct them right where they're at. Now, you don't have to be rude or anything like that about it, but you could say, that's racist, and we don't practice that in our house, and I'd appreciate it if you don't say that around my child, right? So that's the best way that I've done it. Whether it's, even with, with my family, I'd have always hang around a diverse group of people within my family. It's diverse in itself. And I might get a comment of, them saying something where they think that they're playing, for instance, like a sissy word or something like that. They think that they're playing, they think that they're, having a joke or blah, blah, blah. No, we don't say that around here. That's not what we're going to do. And I automatically correct that. And so I correct so much in front of my kids that my kids correct. No, we're a family that doesn't do that. We're a family, we can't listen to that, or I think I'm going to go talk to my mom about that. So that's so much ingrained in my kids. And it's to the point now that people are around me, they already know. So it's about creating those habits and saying those taglines that your kids will always remember. We don't say that, because now my kids are 26, and if we go out and it's a whole birthday, and then they have their friends around, and their friends might slip up and say something, and it's all out of trying to be funny or whatever the case may be. But to me, I think it's at other people's expenses sometimes. But my kids will correct their friends and say, we don't say that. Right, Mom? Right, Mom? Yes, you're right. So the 26-year-old,
I'm laughing because my kids correct me now. I'm the one that gets corrected, and I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Right. And they do, for instance, I think I said midget one time, and my 26, you mean little person? I said, oh, yes, little, and I love that about us, is that we can we create an environment where we're learning from each other, we're correcting each other, and then sometimes we're like, well, I don't know if that's the right term to say, right? And it's all like, well, I'll Google it. Who's going to Google it faster? And so I think that in itself creates an environment where you're constantly teaching your children. You're constantly showing your children. But it only works if you're around, different people. And so I think that we have to be aware of the company that we keep. Now, I'm not saying you got to go out and find you a new Black gay friend today. Because I think that all of that should be organic. It should happen, and it's all in the circles that you create for yourself. So sometimes you have to broaden your circle and go to different activities or different events, that puts you in that circle. And just putting yourself out there like that, it teaches your kids. And so, like I said, it doesn't have to be you teaching or preaching or anything like that. It's just a matter of you showing them that you're trying.
Mm. And one of the things I feel like you have taught me and inspired in me is that it's okay for me to continue to learn. I don't have to have all the answers, but I do have to I have to kind of come at things with an attitude of curiosity, knowing that I don't have all the answers and I'm not always going to get it right, but just that willingness to learn and to be wrong and to correct myself when I'm wrong.
Yes.
Again, that does create an atmosphere where my kids are often correcting me, and I have to be okay with that. But we can learn together.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that's the aspect that I go for, is that I want to learn from you. And it's so much that Keith Ross, my 12-year-old, he always, well, actually, they are all three of them, 26 and 21 and 12. They always want to catch me being wrong. It's the thing that they do, but, I have to tell them that, it's fine if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry that I can't be more wronger for you, because a lot of the things that I talk about is because I know about it. And if I don't talk about it, it's because I don't know, So they're always trying to get their little Google friends and try to test me to see, if I'm wrong about something. And I like that, because I think that we need to create an atmosphere of us not always being right, and us willing to learn from our kids, and for them to research what you're saying. And that's what I love about it, is because now the kids are not taking what you say for granted. Right? They're going to research it. They're going to learn more about it. And I encourage that. I'm always like, well, you don't have to believe me. I tell them I'm something like Google, but you don't have to believe me. Go ahead and search it and do your own research. And I said, and that's what anybody tells you. You have to use these tools. You wanted this iPhone over and over and over and over and over again. This is what you begged for. So now, do you know that you have a full library in your hands? You have all the tools right there. We had to go to the library and flip through cards to find one book, right? You have all the information there. And when you use it for good, what happens? And so that's what I go over and over again. Find it, correct me if I'm wrong, let me know, and it helps me be a better person. It helps me be a better mom, and it helps you learn how to research and not take everybody's word for granted.
So how do we take this attitude of these anti-racist values we're teaching at home, this attitude of curiosity, learning more about cultural diversity? How do we effectively, in our current climate, take this into our schools and have conversations with teachers or principals about including cultural diversity in our kids' curriculum, and why that's so beneficial?
That's a good question, because with our climate, we're told no, 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 and you can't, and don't. And then people are really scared for their job. I mean, it's that serious. It's that serious. But what I learned and what I do here is the culture and all that kind of stuff is not a problem. That's not the problem. Learning about other cultures and all that kind of stuff. I think what it is if we go down to the real issue of things, right? Why are we having an issue? Okay, so a lot of times we're having an issue because of communication, right? So then why did the lines of communication fall down? because you don't understand something. Maybe you don't understand a culture, right? And so sometimes it's all in how we word things. I think our new state superintendent, they're taking, if you have any funds in your line budget item that's marked diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're trying to take it away. You know, so basically your hand as a school system, your hands will be tied. But a lot of the issues that we have, so if we just get down to what do we really want? Well, we want everybody to feel included, right? That's what we want. We want everybody to feel included, where they can bring their full self to school, where they can learn, right? You can't learn if you don't feel included and you don't have respect for the other people that's around you, right? And you can't teach effectively if you don't understand your students. That's the bottom line. So we still need to take that attitude of, what can I learn to effectively teach? What can I learn to effectively learn? You know, and when we put those together, the bottom line is you're going to learn about culture, right? Because some cultures don't believe in looking at you when you're talking. And some people could think that that's rude. Well, when you get to learn and you build these relationships with people, you understand. You know, if you're a teacher and you're getting upset over and over again because a kid's head down and on the desk and they're not participating, well, you get to learn your student. You learn that student, you know, he might have been going through Ramadan for, I don't know if that's what you call it, but it's a whole week of fasting in some cultures, you know, and that's about getting to the bottom of the issue. It's about learning people's culture. And when I say culture, it doesn't necessarily have to do with race or what you're seeing on the outside. You have different levels of your culture and different mindset, which is stuff that you can't see. You know, whether they have a single parent home, you know, whether they're living with generations of people, just, you know, different things on what comes first and why it comes first. Some people's culture schools come very last, and that's, you know, for growth, you know, and that's just about learning people's culture, but it's also when you do that, you're building that relationship with your students. And I think that that's what matters, is you build relationships. Once you build those relationships, you learn culture. And that's not in a textbook. It's you don't get that from going to 6 different colleges, switching different degrees, like somebody I know. You don't get that. You get that from learning people. You learn the people that you serve. And if you're genuinely a teacher who wants to love on those babies and to share the curriculum with them, you have to know their culture, and you have to figure out a way to include them and make sure that they always feel included. I talked to my son, he had an incident and he was upset with the teacher. And so he said, well, I just won't do my work because I don't like her. And I just had to tell him, that's crazy. You can't just not do your work because you don't like the teacher. You know, and so that's another thing that the parents have to explain to the kids. You're not hurting her. The teacher has all of her degrees and she's done with middle school. She's done with elementary. She's done with all this stuff. So it's got to be up to you to learn more about your teacher as well. You know, and so I said, you got to be held accountable as well. You're still in this class and you're going to finish this class. Whether you like the way she does things or not, it's still your responsibility to finish the work. You know, and so it's just about, so I said that to say is that a lot of kids with this generation is, if they don't have that special bond or feel like the teacher at least likes them and includes them, they shut down. They shut down. And then it looks like they're just not doing their work, which most of the times they're not, but it's about, the culture barriers, the inclusive part of it. It's about not having that relationship with that student. And that's why a lot of times when you get to middle school or high school, teachers can just call a coach and be like, hey, coach, they're not doing this, can you do that? And the coach gets them in line. Why? Because, I'm sorry, if I don't move, the light comes out here. But the coach gets them back in line, and that's because the coach understands the type of family they come from. The coach has a relationship with the kids and the parents. So it's all about that relationship that you build. And yes, we could say it's, DEI work, but it really is not just DEI work. It's more of inclusion and building that relationship that you have to have with your students.
That's so helpful to hear it framed like that. I think helps people who might be feeling overwhelmed about how to make that work in their kids' classrooms this year feel like it's a little bit more attainable.
And I could say this too, is that we have plenty of opportunity to do DEI work because the curriculum allows it, right? It's just that when you separate it and say that this is DEI work, then that's a thing, right? So if we're talking in math, if we're in math, right, we've got a lot of African American, Native, LGBTQ plus people in the community that are amazing mathematicians. You know what I mean? They're amazing at what they do when it comes to math, science, astronauts. I mean, all these different things. We have them all throughout our very own curriculum. So that's what I say. You pull all that in. Every subject you could teach, you have different people from different cultures that did amazing in that subject. And just by adding that in your curriculum is showing the students how inclusive you are, which is allowing them to be more open with you and more receptive to your learning to your teaching, because it's not just one-sided, it's not just one way. You're opening up a broad thing, which is already in the curriculum. It's already there. It's just a matter of you going and finding different people that represent that within the curriculum.
That's such a great idea. Let's talk about some of your projects. Since we first met, you have written so many books, many of which are in my library, in my household, that help teach kids and parents too about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So has there been one book in particular along the way that has made the biggest impact on you personally in the research or writing process?
Yes, ma'am. I would say my last book that I what was that last year? It's called Who Said You Could Touch My Hair? I loved writing that book because at the age that I am now, at work, with credentials in front of my name, I still get people reaching out to touch my hair. And it drives me absolutely batty because I'm just like, why can't you just keep your hands to yourself? And why do I have to look like the bad guy for telling you not to touch my hair? So as researching that, we did a documentary, which is, it's not out. We still have footage and we're still going to try to make it work, but it's just crazy trying to do all that stuff. But we had a full question and answer session, which we video recorded, right? And we had it on Greenwood in the event center. I had brunch catered and all that. And so we just had a big thing. So I was expecting maybe 25 people, maybe. Well, it turned out to be over 100. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, they showed up. But the whole thing was is to have an authentic conversation. So we had this authentic conversation. It was two of my Black friends and three of my white friends. So that made it a total of 6. And one of the ladies that was there, which is one of my very best friends, who's white, I met her at Career Tech when I first started working here, right? And so it's been over 14 years ago. But I picked her to come on the panel because, you know, she's very outspoken, unlike me, and she's very honest in whatever she says and whatever she does. And when we went to a leadership conference, she was the one who reached out and touched my hand. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm from Coffeyville, America, so I'm a country girl, and I almost forgot where I was at. I reached out, I almost slapped her when we were, and I was like, and I remember, Tamika, you're at work, you can't act like that. So my other hand went up, I grabbed her hand, and I said, Laura, you never touch a Black lady's hair. But why, Tamika? Your hair is just so pretty, and my hair is just fly, I just want to touch it. And I said, look. I said, now I can't speak for everybody, but I'm going to speak for most of us. And I said, and I'm going to tell you this, but just know it's not my responsibility to tell you to respect people's space, right? And so I pulled her to the side and we had a conversation about it. And I poured out my heart on why you just can't do this. And she looked at me and she said, well, I still want to touch you. My eyes was about big as saucers. I said, what do you mean you still want to touch it? She was like, yeah, I still want to touch it. I said, girl, I'm going to write a book about you, and I'm going to dedicate it. She said, oh, that's good. Write it, dedicate it to me, and then put my picture on. I said, say less. And that's what I did, right? So I wrote the book. And my editor who edited said, that's a long dedication because it's a whole page of dedication. And so about 2 weeks after that, I asked her, because I didn't hear from her. Now, remember, I told you she's outspoken. I didn't hear from her. And I said, Laura, I said, did you read the dedication? She said, oh, no, I didn't know the book was out. So she says, let me go back and read it. And so an hour later, she sent me a message. And she said, Tamika, I am so sorry. She said, I didn't know that you've been hurt before, and I didn't know that continues to hurt you. She says, I came from a town of white people, her words, with 500 people. That's it. She said, it had no diversity, no anything. She says, I didn't learn about any diversity or see any diversity until I went to college. And she said, I was still in shock. And she says, and I just want to thank you and people like you for being in my life, for giving me the opportunity to continue to learn and to grow. And when I read that, I was in tears. I was in tears because for a while, I was going through the perspective of people should know to respect your space, not to get in your space, not blah, blah, blah. You know, this is common knowledge people should know. And what I realized is that everybody is not raised the same way. And they're not raised around the same circumstances. And some people genuinely do not know. And I think that it's my responsibility to give people grace. And so with that being said, I said, people don't know, but then I also, like, when I was going through it, I was like thinking like Charles Barkley back in the day, and I don't know if you remember this, but I'm going to date myself. He says, I'm not a role model to your kids, right? Don't say I'm a role model. But in instance, you might not want to be a role model, but you are by de facto. You're in the media. We see you. You play basketball. They look up to you, right? And so just like I said before, is I can't teach everybody about this. It's not my responsibility to teach you to respect other faiths. And in essence, it is. And so with that, after she said that, and I realized, Tamika, that was your perspective. Your perspective was one-sided. So then we need to have this, we need to have a discussion about it. And what good is having a discussion about this with just Black women, right? We already know how we feel. We already know that we don't want our space violated. We already know that we don't want nobody's dirty hands all in our hair. We already know that, right? But have we had this conversation for others to hear and for others to ask questions about? Because this is your time to ask questions, not while we're at a board meeting, in front of everybody. That's not your time to question me on my hair. So with that being said, we were able to have that gathering at Greenwood, and we had an open discussion with my white friends, my Black friends, and we all talked about it. So it was a 6-person panel, which also allowed all of the audience, which was about 100 people, to ask questions as well, to learn from that. And for me, doing the research on that book allowed me to learn about the Crown Act and ask about it being passed here, which then I realized in Oklahoma is not passed. So it allowed me to advocate for that. And it also allowed me to make a documentary, which is an award-winning documentary now. And it's on Amazon Prime and Tubi. And then I just looked at the Film Hub places, and it's on like 8 other streaming networks that I've never even heard of in my life. But just writing that book and doing the research on that book made it blossom into a thing that I really can be proud of. And the whole purpose of it is to enact healing, and I mean, if we're being honest with each other, we're hurt. That's the whole thing is we're hurt, and we need to come to a place where we can heal, and we want to be able to heal with our friends and our allies, and for our allies to say, I see you. I never will know how it feels to be you, but I see you, and let me try to help you. And that's what that whole thing is about, is let's get to a place where we can heal and we can love on each other. And from that book, Who Said You Could Touch My Hair, that just inspired a whole movement of community healing. And that's where I want to get to. And that's with all of my writings that I do, I want to get to a place of we're not pointing fingers. We're just saying simply, we're hurt. Can we heal together? Because the fact is, if a small portion of their community is hurt, it trickles down to the whole entire community. And that's what we need to realize, is that it's not just the marginalized people that are being hurt, it's going to spread. And we don't want to get to a place where we don't like anybody just because of what we hear others say, or just what the media says, or even sometimes what our parents say. And that's why I encourage my kids to always research it, and then let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. And I always say, you don't have to have my perspective, but this is my perspective, and this is why I have that perspective. And, Keith Rossi always coming on, on the Who Said You Could Touch My Hair. Mom, it's boys in there too. I get that at school too. I said, and I know, and that's what needs to be talked about too. So it opened up a whole thing of a conversation that we could have, and we could have it at a place where we could feel comfortable in talking about it without being judged. And in actuality, sometimes people do want to learn more, but they're scared to ask, because then they're scared that they might look biased or racist or or anything like that, so then they won't ask and then they won't know. And we want to have it where we have a community that's willing to ask for understanding purposes, where they can be better allies. And so that's the environment that I always want to be in. I always want to create. And that is a long answer on the book that you asked me about that made a difference. That book for me was it that encouraged me to do more, and see more and build more authentic relationships. And I appreciate having that opportunity to do that.
And I
Sorry
love
for that long answer, Erin.
it was a good one. And I love that how that inspired your work on the documentary Crown, which is incredible. And how that has inspired a lot of advocacy work for you as well. I think one of the things that is most inspiring for me about all of your work is that you're able to wrap up together affirmation and healing alongside learning opportunities, which I just think it's incredibly powerful that you're able to do and that you're willing to do both of those things together.
Thank you. And I would also say that it's a lot of self-reflecting and noticing when you're wrong. I think that that's a very important in just being a person, is that, we're not always right. We would always like to be right, but sometimes we're not. And when we're not, we could change courses and say, hey, we're wrong. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm sorry. One of my best examples is, I tell the teachers, no matter what, if they want to be called they, call them they. If he wants to be called Tatiana, call him Tatiana. So respect that. And they would come back with a little resistance, saying, they is not correct English. And, I would come back with, I seen your lesson plan, and that's not correct English either. So, and so it's just a little bit, and then a lot of it was, some of it was fear, is like, well, what if I mess up? What if I mess up and call them the wrong name? And I said, I've messed up before too. And what I said is, I apologize. I'm new to this, but I'm willing to make it right. Whenever I'm wrong, please correct me. Right? And I said, and when I talked to the teachers, I said, you know what? They came right to my classroom. Came right to my office and sat in my chair and said, Dr. Rogers, thank you so much. I feel so welcome here. He said, I know you're not going to get it right every time, and we don't expect you to get it right every time. We just expect for you to care. And that was it. It's just that simple. Just show that you care. And I don't see what the huge deal was in the first place, because, we call people by their nicknames all the time and we don't question it. So, and then even the teacher that had did this, is she wanted her students to call her by her last name and not put that handle on it. When we said it's very important that they call you Mrs. out of respect, so you can know, the levels of it. But she still wanted to be called that name. And guess what? The students called her what she wanted to be called. And I use that as an example as well. It's just that simple. It's just that respect that you have, that you show them that you care, That's all they want. They don't need you to move mountains or anything like that. It's to simply show them that you care. And I mean, just imagine, and in actuality, as a teacher, you do care. You do care. And so that's where we need to be in that state of mind. So we are going to make mistakes. We will. As long as we're living, as long as we're breathing, we're going to make mistakes. But it's about being held accountable and holding yourself accountable and saying, you know what? I made a mistake when I said that or when I done that, and I did not mean that. If you see me doing that again, because sometimes habits are hard to break, just please correct me and I'll continue to work on that. And that's what you have to be open to. And so I know I'm not going to get it right every time, but I strive to get it right. I strive to make corrections. And I hope that spills out, in my parenting, in my work, in my writing, everything that I do. I hope that spills out that, I'm not perfect. But I'm willing to make any amends or any changes that needs to be made to make everybody feel included.
Thank you so much. It's just such great perspective for us to have as parents as we go into this new school year. It's a great perspective for us to teach our kids that none of us have to be perfect, but if we just focus on being curious and having empathy. And I appreciate so much all of the opportunities that you have given us over the years to learn from you and to learn alongside you. Thank you for everything that you've taught me and will continue to teach me and all of our listeners. And thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Erin. And you are I am your biggest fan. So I just want to say that again. I do appreciate everything that you do, everything you're doing for the teachers, parents. Your magazine is amazing. I always go, and I can't get the physical magazine here, so I always go online, and that stuff you update that with things to do in OKC for the weekend and all that kind of stuff. So if it wasn't for your magazine, I wouldn't know a lot of things that were happening. So I do look at that and be like, okay, well, when I'm down there, I'm like, well, what does Metro Family say what's going on this weekend? And so I look it up. And so sometimes we end up there. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing for the kiddos in our community and the teachers, parents, and everyone as well. So I appreciate you. You're a great mom, and I love watching your adventures with your kiddos and your husband. And every time I see it, I just smile because I'm like, look at her go. So keep going, and I appreciate everything that you do.
Well, thank you for submitting that article 3 years ago, because it has created just so many opportunities for not just me, but for so many parents. And I'm thankful for the friendship that we've developed out of that. Thanks everyone for listening. Join us next time on Raising OKC Kids.